All right, great. So, hello, podcast listeners. Welcome to another episode of Podcast with Gautam and Jin. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jin Vanstee, and with me is my co-host, Gautam Sivach. Today, we are super excited to have IBM Fellow Marcel Mitran with us. Marcel is the CTO of Cloud Platform at IBM Z Systems and a longtime supporter of driving innovation at IBM. Marcel, welcome to our podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited to be here.
So, Marcel, to kick it off, please tell us about how you started at IBM and what led to your appointment as CTO for IBM Z Systems.
Oh, well, I joined IBM just over 20 years ago, and I started off as a compiler developer in the Java just-in-time compiler team for the IBM JVM, specifically on the Z systems. I played a role there leading soon the Java strategy for Z systems and grew into compilers and platform optimization more broadly. Did a ton of work working with the hardware team, co-designing, co-inventing new instructions, new capabilities, and then kind of took a new role leading the Linux strategy for the platform as the CTO for LinuxONE, and that sort of opened the door to the need for us to embark on a cloud strategy with the platform. It became sort of pretty clear that in the absence of a cloud strategy, we didn't really have a platform strategy on Z systems, and so I drove a lot of the work around the adoption of cloud-native technology, initially IBM Cloud Private, and then OpenShift on Z systems. And I invented HyperProtect, which is our public cloud offering that leverages confidential computing in the IBM cloud, and drove a lot of the strategy as a result around confidential computing for IBM more broadly. So it's interesting how those things have sort of progressed from implementing assembler code basically for Java to, driving a cloud strategy for the platform over those 20 years. And it's always sort of amazing to look back at that progression and just be a bit in awe about it. So yeah, that's sort of, 20 years in a nutshell there.
Thank you. What an amazing journey. So, what are some of your top concerns in the IT industry today, and how is the work that you're leading right now helping to address some of those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in the industry, as there always is. But I'd say a topic that's certainly hot these days and that's continuing to gain more momentum in my view is sustainability. I think we're recognizing that sustainability is no longer a nice to have. It's becoming an imperative for businesses. Consumers are making purchasing decisions based on the sustainability posture of their providers, and so in the IT industry that's equally true. We know that 60% of global businesses consider sustainability fundamental to remain competitive these days. 50% of surveyed organizations seek more energy efficient products and services. And when we look at the IT industry, global data centers, on their own consume the equivalent energy or CO2, or produce the equivalent CO2 emissions to over 26 million homes, right? So there's tremendous opportunity in the IT industry to address green IT or bring green IT to bear. And, we believe that LinuxONE is pretty, with its scale out on scale up infrastructure, which is a very unique way of sort of building dense computing for the enterprise, is a very, very effective way of addressing data and footprint concerns in the data center. And then we've seen this in spades recently with what we've done with the Citi Group and MongoDB, helping them address their sustainability concerns in the in the data center by putting their Mongo as a service cloud solution on LinuxONE. We were able to significantly reduce and address power consumption and physical footprint requirements in the data center for Citibank. We've had other examples of clients like a Dutch local government agency where we were able to reduce the kilowatts consumed by 80% just by moving the workload from x86 blades to LinuxONE. And another great example is what we've done with a large insurer in Asia Pacific, where we reduced their power footprint by 62% by moving their workload from x86 to LinuxONE. But we also reduced the floor space required to run the workload by 86%. And so LinuxONE's been a great way for us to address that sustainability and those sustainability issues and concerns in a very effective way. The other key one that I've noticed is compliance and auditability. There are definitely a lot of challenges around compliance and auditability in the industry. I did some user research work a couple of years ago where I interviewed CIOs and CTOs across the industry and talked to them about security and some of the emerging technologies like confidential computing at the time. And I'd say 9 out of 10 of those conversations quickly pivoted from security to compliance as a focus of the conversation. And that's because a lot of the standards around compliance are changing, and they're becoming more and more complex. And they're changing at a faster and faster pace. There's a lot of risk associated with compliance and auditability. In some sense, it's sometimes more of an art than a science. And so, a lot of these CIOs and CTOs, that compliance and auditability was keeping them up at night, and they are very worried about their ability to meet compliance. And the impacts are quite noticeable. 61% of organizations experience a compliance lapse or violation have done so in the past 3 years. And there are some very severe consequences to failing, to meet compliance audits. So we're building automation technology into LinuxONE called the IBM Z Security and Compliance Center to help with this. We want to be able to integrate and automate and make repeatable the ability to capture all the information required to meet audit requirements on an ongoing basis, right? And detect drift, of course, against those requirements. And as the standards change, to automatically integrate those standards into this compliance and security center so that the client doesn't have to, to keep up with the standards. The system will do it for them. And we've seen that this can have a dramatic effect on reducing the effort required for audits. We think we'll go from months to like a week to prepare for audits, and reduce the effort and the skills required by over 40%. So I think that's going to be a key one for us as well as we look at the evolution of the LinuxONE platform and the Z Systems platform. The last one I'm going to touch on, the last thing that I see as an emerging concern in the industry is really what's going to happen post-quantum, right? What's going to happen when, quantum computers become pragmatic and practical and can start to break existing encryption technology. And we all know that that's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. I see financial institutions worldwide getting worried about this because there are existing bad actors who are already doing, harvest and decrypt later efforts where they're capturing the existing encrypted data today in anticipation of their ability to decrypt the data in the post-quantum age, which is, nearing. And so we see this as a huge threat, right, to financial institutions, to the world economy, to on so many dimensions of our social and economic world. And so we've introduced technology with the IBM Z16, and down the road, on LinuxONE as well, that allows for encrypting data and keeping it secure in the post-quantum era. And so this is quantum safe crypto technology. So that's an area where I also see a lot more focus and a lot of energy, emerging today.
So thank you for that elaborate answer, Marcel. So you talk about LinuxONE being a platform to help clients address sustainability as well, and being the platform to host the auditing and compliance center, and you've been the CTO for LinuxONE now for the last 7 years. Would you be able to talk a little bit about also, what LinuxONE is in general?
Absolutely. So LinuxONE is really us kind of recognizing, I'd say roughly about 7-8 years ago, that there is value in that as Linux became more central to the IT landscape and to enterprises' strategy, that there was a need for Linux environments that offer better qualities of service around availability, around security, scalability, and so we introduced LinuxONE in 2015 into the market with that in mind, right? To create a Linux system that's designed for the enterprise, that's going to be able to take advantage of all the open, fast-paced innovation of the Linux ecosystem, but give you also all the value propositions of enterprise-ready infrastructure. And we, IBM, have 6 decades of experience building enterprise-ready infrastructure, as we have with our Z systems. And so we thought that bringing those two worlds together and creating a Linux-only system that's built on top of that infrastructure was a great way to address the emerging need for this this enterprise-ready Linux environment. And so the LinuxONE is very different than what you can do on other commoditized Linux environments. It offers 7 nines of availability. That's roughly 3 seconds of downtime a year. It allows you to scale out and scale up on the same on a single piece of infrastructure. You can host thousands of Linux guests, millions of containers on a single piece of infrastructure. And you can dynamically reallocate resources like compute, memory, I/O across the environment in a non-disruptive way. You can host up to 85 different hypervisors on a single LinuxONE environment. And all of those hypervisors are provided better than air gap isolation between them. So it's really 85 discrete systems that are providing EAL5 plus isolation. That's the best in the industry. But that can share the same resources under the cover to give you a very efficient way of running your enterprise and keeping it up and running and highly available. And then it's all about being designed for the enterprise. So having large caches, massive, like 8 to 15x more cache per thread than anything else in the industry. Having integrated acceleration for encryption, up to 9 times faster and better bandwidth for encryption and decryption than anything else in the industry. It's about having the world's best hardware security module and highest certified hardware security module. The FIPS, our HSM is FIPS 142-2 level 4 compliant. Nobody else in the industry has a hardware security module that's certified at that level. And so it's the aggregate of all those capabilities that make it possible for clients like like Citi to host Mongo in a way that's incredibly efficient. They were able to meet their sustainability goals just by rehosting, but they're also able to provide a more resilient and more scalable and more responsive solution for Mongo than they could prior. And along the way, they were able to address concerns around cyber resilience that they could not address on the x86 infrastructure that the Mongo environment was hosted on prior. So it's it's really that's what LinuxONE is, right? It's the enterprise-ready Linux environment that you always wanted, that comes with all the right qualities of service and engineering to meet the needs of running Linux-based, mission-critical, enterprise-ready environments.
Great information and awesome stats for our listeners. You were recently appointed as an IBM Fellow, and in the end, please share your experience about some of the key technical projects or accomplishments in your career to date for people who look up to you as a role model, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it goes back to the early days of working on the JVM, and right off the bat when I joined IBM, I was always challenging the de facto standard, this is the way we do it, and always looking for why can't we do something different? Why can't we do it better? And it started with just how we tested the JVM back in 2001. The first thing I did when I joined the team was I said, hey, this isn't the right way to test this. I mean, we should really rewrite the test harness from being in C to being written in something like Perl, which was much more amenable to, string manipulation and string management and so on and so forth. And I just, did it over the weekend and then brought it to the team, and they shockingly said, okay, sure, we'll try your way, Marcel. And it was a resounding success. And, I never looked back from that point on. It was always about, why can't we do more? Why can't we do something better? When it came to the JVM, it was, what else can we do in the hardware? What else can we do in the middleware? What else can we do in the operating system? Let's not just limit our scope of innovation to the JVM itself. Why don't we think about the JVM as part of an end-to-end stack, an integrated end-to-end stack? And that was something that was very unique, of course, about IBM. It continues to be very unique about IBM, is that you have the power or the ability to influence the entire stack and integrate the entire stack. And that just gave me a lot of, got me very excited and gave me a lot to play with, quite frankly, and a lot to go innovate with. And to this day, over 100 new instructions introduced into the S390X architecture as a result of a lot of that innovation. And then with Linux, that continued. It was, let's think about a Linux-only system and what could we do. Let's make sure that we are bringing new workloads to the platform and not just sort of living on the existing tested and proven workloads with technology. And let's drive differentiation like technology, like confidential computing, which translates into secure execution on the platform today. And then sort of recognizing the need for that cloud strategy, and when everybody was saying, why would we ever do cloud native on Z, I was the first to say, we have to do it, let's do it, and figured out how to do it, and got wrestled some arms and legs to go off and get a port of IBM Cloud Private working, and lo and behold, people got very excited about it, and it took off. And that, of course, led into the need to bring OpenShift to the platform when the Red Hat acquisition closed, and that making Z a priority when we looked at where to go with OpenShift and what to focus on. It was very clear from a business perspective, due to the success we had with IBM Cloud Private, that OpenShift on these systems had to be a priority for Red Hat and for IBM to figure out. And it just snowballed from there. And then the last point I'll make was just the public cloud and getting LinuxONE and Z systems into the public cloud. And there was a lot of pushback when I started entertaining those conversations, and a lot of minds are grounded in the existing business and the what the rest of the industry is doing, and it's hard to get people's minds shifting to, well, what's the art of the possible if we don't allow us to be bound by the rest of the industry, but see really differentiation and value instead. And that's how HyperProtect came about. And it was interesting because that came about through an engagement with Apple, where Apple started off saying, we don't want to go after the existing mainframe business. That's not something that we see value in. But when I told them about the value proposition that we could provide through a public cloud offering, and that would open up the value of these systems to a much broader audience, which is what Apple is all about, volumes, right, and reaching volumes of clients. When we were able to show them that, they got very excited about the value proposition, and that helped them to launch the HyperProtect work. So I think it's just the ongoing process of challenging the way we do things and recognizing that there's always room for better, for more improvement, and for change, right? But doing so in a constructive way where you're bringing the right data, the right arguments to bear, and showing people the value and making the right arguments. So I think that just having done that repeatedly over the last 20 years is largely why I've been able to get to where I am today.
So wonderful insights today, Marcel. Thank you for sharing with us on how IBM Z and LinuxONE addresses top IT concerns around sustainability, compliance management, and post-quantum security. And thank you for sharing career highlights and driving innovation at IBM. We look forward to bring more content on emerging technology for our listeners and learn from life experiences from people like Marcel, and wishing all technology enthusiasts a great success and growth in their technology career. Thank you.